Good morning, you're tuned to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty and I'm delighted to be joined by Sean Martin. How are you, Sean?
Not bad, Tony. Yourself?
Good. It's the eve of the Europa League. Celtic travel to Spain to take on Real Betis. And you and Andy have spoken about it yesterday. Celtic's record in Spain's absolutely bogging, Sean. Let's not kid ourselves, so they're going to have to do something they've never done before, and that's reign in Spain if they can. Played 19, 1-0. We'll gloss over that. But can they do it?
Can they do it? Aye. I mean, there's always records are there to be broken and stuff, and aye, they can do it. A few things will need to go their way for them to do that. I think. I think you'll agree with that as well. I think a lot of it might be down to team selection as well, which I'm sure we'll come on to. The fact that Betis haven't had the same rest as Celtic, hopefully for Celtic's sake, would come into it. But as I said to Andy yesterday, Celtic have had already a few games where they've only had a couple of days in between. And Celtic have managed to still get to the group stages of the Europa League. So I wouldn't count on Betis being tired or anything this early in the season. So a few things are going to need to go Celtic's way, I think, to get that result.
I know Maurizio Pellegrini wasn't chuffed about the fact that they were playing on Monday night and then playing against Celtic Thursday, but you've quite rightly highlighted that Celtic have had the same problems this season and came through it. So it's just what you do as footballers. You have to just play the games when you're asked to.
That's it. I mean, it's a bit early in the season to be really saying that the fixture list is too hectic and all that. I mean, it's too early in the season to be talking about load management and all that. That's for later on. That's when that pays off. Right now, then, all right, Celtic still have a depth issue, which I keep harping on about, but it's still too early in the season for that to really be the deciding factor, I would hope. Don't know what you think on that.
You know, both sides won at the weekend, so they're going into it with a level of confidence. You know, it took a last-minute goal from Betis against Granada to win 2-1. You know, as you and yourself and Andy spoke about yesterday. You know, so both sides are in fairly confident mood, I would have thought.
I think so. I mean, Celtic obviously come back for that international break. The performance against Ross County, well dominant, wasn't necessarily rip-roaring, as you would say. But they still managed to score 3 times. They had more than a couple of players missing from their lineup from the last few games that they played. Still scored 3 times, still won, still kept a clean sheet, bedded in a couple of new signings. So it still bodes well.
Now, you're talking about strength and depth or a lack of strength and depth. You, Alison and Andy have put up your team for tomorrow night, and it's on the Celtic Way for those who want to look at that article. Now, we were going to talk about my team, and I believe that the team that I have picked is the same one as yours, Sean. So, great minds think alike or full seldom differ. We'll let everyone outside of this broadcast be the judges of that. But yeah, my team is exactly the same as yours. I can see the 2 centre-backs being the same. I think there's a wee bit of continuity there. And I can also see James McCarthy coming in to that midfield to maybe let Callum McGregor operate in a more forward role, because you would think in order to get any kind of result that Celtic might have to score, need to score in Spain. That's my thoughts on it, to be honest.
I agree with you. I think the most games this season, I know I've just said they've kept a clean sheet, and they've actually kept a few clean sheets already this season, but I think most games Celtic will go into not only thinking that they will score, but I think the fans will probably think that they need to score as well, because they will give up chances, and they did give up chances against Ross County as well on Saturday. At that point, it becomes, does Joe Hart do his job, which he's been doing excellently so far? I think we'll agree he's come up with a few timely saves in his short spell between the sticks already. And also, do the defence keep the door shut? Now, they will, as I say, concede chances. Another thing to play into that, and this is where the AZ game comes to mind for me, is the finishing of the opposition, because we got away with a couple against AZ in the first leg as well. And, you know, as I say, Celtic can score in every game, really. They might not score in every game, but they have the potential to create chances, good enough chances to score in every game. And I don't think that will be any different even against the Betis and Leverkusens that they play. The key will probably be how they do at the back for these games.
Yeah, and speaking of the back, yourself and myself have agreed that Ralston comes back in to his right back berth, and you and I agree that Juranovic can switch to the left. Now that might be harsh on young Montgomery, who's played very, very well when he's deputised, but I just feel that Ange might think that it's too big a game to risk a youngster like Montgomery, certainly.
The reason that I agree with that is that he didn't put him in for Ibrox, and I thought he would if Taylor wasn't fit. I thought he would go with Montgomery at Ibrox for that reason, because he'd been the kind of deputy, he'd come on against AZ and done well enough. But then he went with Juranovic for his debut out of position, which was a risk. He done well. He done well. So for that reason, I think he will switch Juranovic back to left back and go with like Ralston's athleticism and the fact that he's one of the formed players at the moment. So if he is back fit, I agree with you. I think the back four will be Ralston on the right, Juranovic on the left. And then for the reason that I don't think he'll want to tinker with three of the back four from Saturday, I think he'll stick with Carter, Vickers and Starfelt. Although I noticed that Andy has predicted that Welsh will come back in, even though he has also said Juranovic will come back in and Ralston will go to the right back position. So he is predicting three of the back four to kind of change positions, at least if not personnel, from Saturday. Don't know if you think that's got merit, the Welsh coming straight back in for Carter Vickers after a man of the match goal scoring debut.
You said it there, a man of the match goal scoring debut. Do you drop a man who's had a man of the match and a goal scoring debut? I think not. I mean, I do think the harshest decision will be on young Montgomery, because I actually think he played very well, and I got a bit of abuse for giving him 5 in my player ratings on Saturday when he came in after Taylor got injured, and I did tinker with the idea of giving him 6. I probably should have, because he did play very well, and he has played very well. But again, we go back to it and we speak about horses for courses teams, and I think that's a horses for courses. In my opinion, the team that you and I have picked as a horses for courses team that Ange might think, and also as well, Juranovic, a Croatian left back. There's some real experience. Sorry, a Croatian defender anyway. You know, so he's an experienced defender. You know, I just think maybe experience trumps what Montgomery, even though Montgomery has really done nothing wrong for me. You know.
No, that's my point. I think that Montgomery did do nothing wrong. I mean, I've said before, I think he's looked better going forward when he's come on for those flashes at left wing rather than left back. I think decision making and stuff, but he's still learning the position as well. And nonetheless, I genuinely did think Montgomery would play left back against Rangers at Ibrox. The fact that he didn't suggest to me that he won't tomorrow either. But I've no problem with Juranovic going in there either, because as I say, it wasn't an easy debut to make out of position. Out of position in front of no away fans at Ibrox. It was a difficult debut, and he done well. The only thing I would say is that it did slow down the kind of pace of play on the left hand side, which naturally happens when you're playing a right footer who isn't as comfortable with his left foot to go on the outside. He's got to check back in quite a bit, but nonetheless he looks comfortable in possession, so it wasn't a massive concern. It just kind of interrupted the flow of the play, which I mean it could play into things on Thursday, but I still don't think it's a massive concern playing Juranovic there, and as you say, the experience might be the deciding factor for Ange in that respect.
Now David Bradley comes in, James in all day. Now I'm assuming he means James McCarthy and not the band. James, not.
Oh, sit down, Tony.
It's not sit down. Indeed, I am sitting down. But yeah, he wasn't specific there, but we'll assume he means James McCarthy.
Aye.
And you and I have both said that James McCarthy should come into the starting lineup, because there will be an element of Celtic needing to defend, and McCarthy will protect that, and maybe let McGregor be more offensive, and hopefully Celtic can create openings through that.
I think it might be that he goes in alongside McGregor, albeit McGregor would in that case have license to go further forward if required, but I think having McGregor to still be able to take the ball off that back four will be key, especially in a game where I'm expecting the possession stats to be more even than they usually are in a Celtic game, if you know what I mean. So when Celtic do have the ball, it's especially important that they actually keep it and that they get it through the thirds as quick as possible. And I do think that McGregor still being able to be the one to take the ball more often than not off of the back four will be key to that. I think McCarthy's presence will give you an added maybe solidity there, hopefully. I think when he came on against Ross County, I think he was consistently shown for passes and he was looking to get it forward when he could. He also hit the bar for that Ajeti goal. So I think he could come in. I agree with you.
And Frank Brennan comes in. Celtic must have a mindset tomorrow night that they must take something out of the game, and a draw is perfectly perfect and okay with me. And of course, Andy's only ever going to play Ange ball and not 10 defenders. Do you agree with that, Sean? I agree with the fact that Frank's saying that I don't think a draw's a bad result for Celtic in any shape or form. Tomorrow, they have to take something. I totally agree with that.
I agree with it. I think Frank's referencing yesterday that we put up a comment, and I think I misunderstood what he meant by pragmatic. I thought he did mean that Celtic should go like defensive and Ange wouldn't do it, and that's I agree. I don't think Ange would do it. So I agree with him wholeheartedly there. I think that they do have to essentially go for the win, but if it's a draw, then that is a positive result as well. And I also agree with them that that's not necessarily 10 defenders to play for a draw. That is playing the way that is to your strengths to try and get the best result that you can from the game. And if the best result that you can get on the night is a draw, then that is a positive for Celtic, I would think.
Very much so. And also, we have put Ajeti up front. His 2-goal salvo on Saturday. People say he didn't do much, but he still scored 2 goals. Strikers are judged on goals, and he scored two poachers' goals, 2 instinctive goals, Sean, with both headers. Thought his first header was particularly good. And you mentioned yesterday as well that Abada, both those goals came from crosses. If Celtic have got Jota on one side, Abada on the other, then that could be the key to getting something from the game, crosses into the box, and maybe Ajeti getting on the end of it. Giakoumakis is that kind of striker, but we don't know how fit he is, and probably be a risk if he started Giakoumakis. But if he's fit for the bench, then he could maybe come off the bench and get on the end of a cross if needed. So, so there's all sorts of permutations there. I think
based on the fact that he wasn't even in the squad on Saturday, I would suggest Giakoumakis, if he is ready for the squad, won't start. Again, Ajeti, it's the same kind of logic with Cameron Carter-Vickers. If you keep a clean sheet, get man of the match and score on your debut, likewise, if you're given a rare start and you score twice, can you really take them back out of the team right away when the alternative isn't even necessarily ready to start? So I would probably expect Ajeti to start, but despite the 2-goal display, I do think you're going to need to see a more robust all-round performance against Betis. I think it's all one kind of being just the poacher against Ross County, but I think he will need to offer a wee bit more against Betis, considering, as I've said, I don't think Celtic are going to be as dominant as they usually would be or as they were against County.
Now, David Bradley comes in with another comment, but he uses a wee query there. You can see it in the bottom of your screen, saying that Ajeti need to work his derriere, shall we say, Sean, off tomorrow night. And I agree with that. You've touched on it there. Excuse me. He'll have to do a lot of running, won't he?
He will. And I mean, I thought it was notable that Ange and obviously Ange seems quite switched on when it comes to the perception that people have of some of his players, and he does seem to be a manager that will defend his players even if he is going to tell them something different in private, which I think everybody appreciates. But when he was asked about Ajeti's kind of performance on Saturday, he almost referenced that he was working hard. It was just almost in a different way than the likes of Kyogo does. Like the kind of, I noted in the points from the presser, he was almost referencing that it's a different type of persistence than Kyogo has. Like Kyogo will press you, he'll drop deeper to get the ball if he's not getting the service. Whereas Ajeti, the persistence Ange was kind of compliment them for was the persistence of constantly getting in those positions where he ended up scoring from, the poacher, if you will. I do still think, though, that he's going to need to offer more than that when it comes to a game that Celtic aren't the best team, really, if you're going to be harsh about it. And they're not going to be the favourites in it. So I think he will need to offer more than just that kind of persistence tomorrow if he starts.
Now, follower Celtic comes in and he says the key word tomorrow is movement. Celtic have to be mobile, find space, yet also close down. That's kind of what we've been touching on there. It is the movement, isn't it, of players and putting in a shift, really, isn't it? And doing your job. Bottom line.
Well, that's the thing. Like when I done as a reference yesterday, I'm going to plug it again here. The who replaces Kyogo if they can replace Kyogo, and I mentioned that for replacing Kyogo, what he brings to the team, it's not just raw effort. Like his persistent movement and his relentless pressing and stuff. He does it with a purpose. It's the same as Ange was talking about passing with a purpose. You don't pass it just for the sake of passing it to the first person you see. He's looking for people to move and be in kind of perpetual motion to offer passes that will help them build. It's not just pass it to the first guy you see and hope that they do something with it, that kind of thing. And it's the same for me. It's the same when it comes to off the ball movement. It's not just necessarily running about for the sake of running about. It's running to a position that you can then affect the game. And I think that is where Kyogo really stands out in his 9 games since he started. He is always looking on, whether it's off the shoulder, or whether it's dropping deep, or whether it's a wee movement inside the box to kind of fill the defenders in the kind of in the lanes and stuff. He's stood out in that way, and I think in each individual position there is a kind of method of doing that. Maybe not to the same high standard, but there is a method of making movements that actually affect the game rather than just moving for the sake of moving. And I think that's what the viewer meant there, in terms of you've got to be able to actually make a difference with the movement rather than just running about, if you know what I mean. And that will be key in a game that you're not necessarily going to have the ball as much as what you do domestically.
I think Ajeti has to be mindful of that more than anybody on the park tomorrow, because he could be a pivotal figure in Celtic's team tomorrow night. You know, so he, as you said, and we've said, he has to offer more, doesn't he, tomorrow in terms of effort? You know,
I think so. I mean, as I say, it's hard to criticise somebody that just scored 2 goals when they've had it's a rare start. But I do think that ultimately, don't get me wrong, if he goes in and plays exactly the same way and scores twice, nobody's going to be complaining. But at the same time, and as a general rule, you would want him to offer a wee bit more from an all-round perspective as well.
Jota, what did you make of Jota on his debut on Saturday?
I quite enjoyed it. I thought I kind of commented on it the other day. I think he looked entertaining. He looked as if he was always wanting to get on the ball. There was no hiding on his debut. He wasn't trying to ease himself into it. He wanted it every time there was an attack, basically. Obviously likes a dribble, but he got in his crosses as well, which when but might get to the stage that Giakoumakis is fit, he can finish with his feet. It's not like he can't finish with his feet. He does one-touch finishes quite well, but he obviously is tall and he's robust and he likes a header. So the fact that Jota's so willing to put in several crosses will bode well for playing with Giakoumakis as well, you would think. So I'm intrigued to see what he can bring to the team if he gets a run of games now.
Do you see him being a pivotal player tomorrow, Sean? I think if his end product can improve and can improve greatly, then he will be a real boost for Celtic moving forward.
I think he'll start. Yeah, I think the only way that he wouldn't start is if James Forrest is now fit. But again, I mean, first of all, I predicted him to start at Ibrox, I think, and was it Ibrox? Might have been the Saturday, but I predicted him to start anyway at one point when it looked as if he was coming back, and he wasn't even in the squads. So if he's not fit, then yeah, Jota will start. If Forrest is actually fit to start, I think it probably would be Jota that would drop out, but it doesn't look as if he will be at this stage, given he wasn't even in the squad on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot kind of contrasting views on Jota's debut. A lot of people saying he was very good, others saying, he was just okay. So, but I mean, I was quite impressed. It was a boy's first game, and I thought he did very well. So, if regardless if James Forrest is fit, I still think he might go with Jota just to give him a run of games to see what he can produce. And ease Forrest back in. But then again, Forrest is all the experience in the world. So it's another big call for the manager.
Aye, and I do take your point that there was I wouldn't say wastefulness, but I do agree he could have done better with his end product, and he might actually still be disappointed he didn't manage to either get a goal or an assist. But just in general, I was quite happy with his play on Saturday and how eager he was to clearly impress. And I mean, he's just joined, and he's obviously got this golden youth pedigree. And I'm genuinely intrigued to see what a coach like Ange Postecoglou can unlock of that pedigree, if you know what I mean, at the senior level?
Well, the excitement's building, Sean. You can see it in the two of us right now. And I'm sure the commenters are all getting excited as well. It is a tough group, but it's a group that shouldn't frighten Celtic. And if they give it a rip and they have a right good go at it and see what happens, to the victor, the spoils. But I think we touched on it yesterday. The two games against Betis could be the clincher in the group in terms of qualifying and not qualifying. So, it's a tough start, but you have to play them at some stage.
That's it. And I mean, I kind of wanted to reiterate yesterday that Celtic already know what Ferencváros, you can't write them off or anything like that. You can't assume, neither can Betis, that they're going to beat Ferencváros. Obviously, Celtic just need to tackle that when they come to it. But on the face of things, then yes, the games against Betis will probably be the key, because you would need to acknowledge Leverkusen are the strongest team in the group. Statistically, rankings-wise, whatever way you want to put it, Ferencváros are the weakest. That doesn't mean that they're also Rans, obviously, but that does suggest that it will come down to the Betis and Celtic games, and that begins tomorrow in earnest.
And a result of any kind tomorrow, positive, whether it be a draw or a win, would be the ideal start for Celtic, wouldn't it?
Yes, exactly. I think, obviously, context is everything, depending how they play, if they get other chances, blah, blah, blah. But all things being equal, a draw or a win they're both positive results for Celtic, starting away from home in Spain, where, to come back to the start, they do not rain very often.
And just for Feed the Bear, I'll say it. Okay. You want a rip-roaring, free-scoring, never boring performance from Celtic tomorrow in Spain. I think Celtic and all the supporters would do with that. This has been the Celtic Way Daily Morning Briefing. And as you can see along the bottom, you can subscribe for $2.99 a month. I've been joined by Sean Martin. Thanks for your contribution again, Sean.
Cheers, Tony.